listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more in your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and it's time to come on, son, and talk about my favorite media friendship, Shawn and Gus from the TV series Psych. And to help me break down their friendship is Courtney from the Spoop Hour podcast. Hi, Courtney.
You know that's right. Hi, Alysa.
We're such psych dorks.
I have been bothering Alysa about guesting in the Psych episode. I don't know if you remember, but it's been months because like when we did our Veronica Mars episode together, you mentioned you wanted to do one on Psych, and I was like, if you need someone to guest about Psych.
Here's the thing, Veronica Mars was a year ago, so it has been months. It's like you planted a seed and then the bomb just blew up in the last week, and I was like, hey, Courtney. And I think I just sent her a gif of Shawn and a pineapple.
Yeah, you did. And I was like, all right, let's do this. I've been rewatching Psych. Let's go.
Yeah, this is the third time I've rewatched Psych since March. So since quarantine happened. Yeah. And I just have it on in the background. I watch other things, but it's just a way to
it's
laugh and have a good time and reflect and pull out some good examples and things like that. But I've wanted to talk about Psych forever. So it seems strange that it's episode 124. It took that long to get there, but I think the show is so special to me that I just been putting it off, because I'm like, oh, I can't even imagine if I talk about it, then it's done, as if I can't talk about it again if I want to. So
after this, Psych is gone forever.
Yeah, that's it. Well, let's hope not. At least let me relive it through reruns. So for those of you who are listening who are like, what is happening? Let me tell you a little bit about the show that we're going to talk about over 2 episodes. So Courtney is here this week, and then she'll be back next week too. Whoop, whoop.
Party, party.
So according to the USA Network webpage for Psych, the show's premise is described as a quick-witted dramedy about a young police consultant, Shawn Spencer, starring James Roday Rodriguez, who solves crimes with powers of observation so acute that Santa Barbara's police department detectives think that he's a psychic. Psych also stars the wonderful Dule Hill from The West Wing as Shawn's best friend and reluctant sidekick Gus, and I also love Corbin Burnson as his disapproving father Henry, who ironically was the one who honed his son's quote-unquote observation skills as a child. And then there's also 2 detectives and a chief. You got Timothy Amundsen. Is that how you say his last name?
Amundsen, thank
you.
I'm a big fan of Tim Amundsen.
I love him from this show. I haven't watched him in much else, but he plays Carlton Lassiter.
You should watch Gallivant. He's delightful in Gallivant.
I did know that he was in that. I just have never seen it.
You should watch it. It's real quick.
Maggie Lawson plays Juliet O'Hara, and Kirsten Nelson plays Chief Karen Vict. So let me tell you a little bit more. So raised in Santa Barbara by a family of cops, Shawn possesses uncanny powers of observations honed by his police father, Henry, who drilled young Shawn to know even the smallest of details from his surroundings as a way of grooming him for his inevitable career in the family business. Unfortunately, when a rift develops between father and son, Shawn finds himself taking a series of random jobs instead of becoming a detective he was groomed to be. However, for the fun of it, Shawn makes a habit of calling in tips to the police about cases he reads about or sees on television, and when one of his tips appears too close to the truth, the police are convinced that Shawn is an accomplice and arrest him. So using his charm and well-tuned talent, Shawn convinces the cop that he's actually a psychic, and although highly skeptical of his explanation, they hire him to help solve tough cases. And then with the reluctant assistance of course, his best friend Gus, Shawn uses a skill of observation and charismatic personality to become the detective he was trained to be, opening his own PI agency called Psych and solving cases for an ever-suspicious but grudgingly impressed police force. So what we're saying is that the premise is a lie. He's not a psychic.
It's very silly as far as premises go. But if you have ever seen The Mentalist, they start lampshading it in the 2nd or 3rd season because The Mentalist came after Psych, but it started with basically the same premise. He pretends to be a psychic and solves crimes for the police. So,
and I just love that they make fun of it on this show because it's like, we were here first, but of course The Mentalist is on CBS, so it's getting more prime views, even though this was like one of the most popular shows on basic cable in 2006. But I just love that they make fun of it throughout the series. And then since Psych, they've been on other TV shows, and you can catch references to that in the newest movie that came out this past week. Aww. So the show has been around since July 7th, 2006, and ran for 8 seasons with 120 episodes, with the series finale airing on March 26, 2014. There's also a musical, a movie from 2017, and the second movie, Lassie Come Home, is now on Peacock streaming. And I don't know if that's going to be charged, but right now it's free. So I was able to watch the movie without getting an account of any kind. So the show has a cult following, and I guess me and Courtney, maybe for other reasons besides watching Psych, we are called psychos. But that's the cult following. And some of the things that you need to know about the show that makes it so clever and witty is just that there are frequent jokes on the show. In the first episode, James Roday picks up a pineapple and improv, "Should I cut this up for the road?" And since then, pineapples are key to the show, and fans will look for pineapples or references to pineapples in each episode and the movies. We also have a long-running bit of Shawn giving Gus a series of nicknames when introducing him. Some of these nicknames are, in fact, improved by Gus, but most, of course, are not. And he would like to veto probably 99% of the nicknames that Shawn gives him. And then the other one that is a long-running gag is when Shawn doesn't like how Gus is reacting to him or acting in general, Shawn will say something along the lines of, "Gus, don't be a ... And it's ridiculous. So we're going to be talking about some of these fun things along with their friendship. So first, I'd like to start and say, Courtney, how did you become a psycho? How did you get into the show? Why do you like the show? And tell us everything.
So people who know me now or have only known me for the past 10 years or longer are going to be surprised to hear this, but I went through a phase in high school where I was like, TV's boring. I'm too good for TV. I don't like TV at all. I don't watch any TV shows. None of it's interesting. It's all the same. Who cares? Because I was like a deeply hipster child in an era before hipsters.
Well, aren't you fancy?
And I took great pride in being, my friends would be like, "Oh, did you see this show?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't watch TV."
Oh my God, you nerd.
I know. The last TV show I watched before this phase took place was season 3 of Lost. And at the end of season 3 of Lost, I got mad because of somebody who died. And I was like, well, I'm done with this show, and now I'm done with all TV. So
I thought you might have got lost watching Lost because that show was confusing AF, even though I loved it.
It only got confusing after I got out, so I was fine.
Yeah, yes.
So, 2 years goes by, 2.5, 3 years, whatever. Time goes by. I'm now a senior in high school, and I'm home alone, and I can't find a movie that I want to watch, and nothing good is on that I'm like, I'll just put this on mindlessly, because, occasionally I would watch a mindless thing, but I didn't follow anything. That was the important distinction. And the thing I found to watch, well, frankly, probably looking for a Law and Order, was turned on the USA channel. And I started watching the season 1 episode with the tennis player.
Yes.
So where she goes missing, they find her, but she's been hit over the head, and so she's unconscious for a little bit, and then they solve the crime, whatever. And so I started watching it, and I'm like, oh, he's pretending to be a psychic. That's interesting. And he and his buddy are really funny. And then that was that. I was like, this show is rad. And so I watched the next episode. I went back and watched all the season 1 episodes. I DVR'd everything. I got super intense about it. And then that was the beginning of me getting caught up on TV pop culture that I missed.
It was the start of a beautiful friendship is what it
sure was. So that's where I came into Psych. I fell off the wagon with watching it in college just because my college cable didn't have USA. And
so wrong.
I know. So I set my home DVR to record it, and at some point somebody wiped my home DVR of my Psych.
Oh my God.
And at that point I was behind enough that I couldn't get caught up on USA.com. So I was like, well, I guess that's it for Psych. I'll catch it when I catch it. And then Netflix happened, and then I was like, oh, I'll finish watching the show. So, cards on the table. I have not seen either movie. I'm rewatching it now. When I finish the rewatch, I will watch the movies.
We're going to talk about the 2 movies for Patreon special. So, so patrons will be able to hear our comments about that. I've seen both of the movies, and I tweeted the new movie live on Wednesday, July 15th, if you want to go back and find the thread. Courtney found the thread then muted me.
I did.
This is a reminder to unmute me on Twitter.
I already unmuted you.
Oh, perfect. But this is one of the only shows where I own all seasons of the DVD. So let me tell you, the opposite of Courtney, I watch a lot of television, and I always have. And when people are like, yuck, you watch that? I'm like, don't yuck my yum. I mean, I watch everything, things that are bad, things that are good, things that are ironically bad but are good. Like, I just watch it all. Like, there's most shows I'd watch at least 3 episodes, let's say, unless there was something horribly wrong with it.
I feel like I should clarify. My not TV watching phase was actually for longer. High school was when I bragged about it, but now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, Lost was the first show that I watched and followed in a long time. So, like, growing up, I never watched Full House. I missed a lot of Nickelodeon shows. Like, a lot of stuff from that, like, late 90s. Like, part of it was when my family moved to Japan, obviously, we didn't have American TV. So in 4th grade, I kind of fell off watching American TV. And then when I moved back, I pretty much just, like, I watched Pokemon in the 5th grade, and then that was kind of the end of it. And then I just didn't pick anything else up for, 6 years.
Well, I mean, I guess if I was in another country, I probably wouldn't be able to catch up on stuff. I get that.
Not in 1999. There was nothing.
Yeah. You didn't miss anything. The show didn't come out till 2006, so you're fine. But one of the things, because I've watched so much TV, it's probably not surprising that I don't remember how I got into the show. I don't remember if I watched it from the beginning or if it was recommended to me by my friend Tierney. I just know that we both shared a great interest in the show. And one time when she came to visit me in New York, I got her the bobbleheads of Gus and Shawn fist bumping, which is one of their nonverbal affections that they provide to each other. But there's a number of reasons why I love this show. I'm similar in age to the characters of Gus and Shawn, and so their references to childhood and the things that they're into is just like on point. Is like, how do you know about my life, right? Like, how did you live my life, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I love crime shows, but I love the spin with comedy. And so and the 2 have great chemistry, Dule Hill and James Roday Rodriguez as Shawn and Gus. So I think that's really important. Men's friendships don't get much attention, so I've been able to geek out over their bond for 14 years. And so that's just like a long time. And then that leads me to go parasocial relationships, like one-sided friendships, right? Can't I be Gus and Shawn's friend? And we'll talk about if we'd actually be friends with them, because I think that's important to discuss. But one last fun fact about me and Psych before we get into our favorite quotes and nicknames and stuff is that I didn't watch the finale for 3 years. Because I didn't want the show to be over. And so it was on my DVR, and I started it one time, and I watched like the first 5 minutes, and I turned it off. I was like, I can't do it. And then I got rid of my DVR, so then it got erased. And then I think when the 2017 movie came out, I watched it as a way to prepare for the movie. But I didn't want it to be over. And I think that the hope of the movie coming out made me, very excited to kind of, like, no, it's not over, so to speak. So.
I did that a little bit with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a show that I really loved. And I knew it was ending, so, like, 3 episodes before the end, I was like, I'm just going to stop watching this. And then when I'm emotionally ready, I'll finish watching the show. And emotionally ready turned out to be when quarantine started. So I gave it like a year, but still.
Wow. Yeah, there's some things you don't want to end. You want to be in denial for a while. You want to sort of stay in that universe of Santa Barbara and the Psych office and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to savor it for as long as I can. But the nice thing is, because we have streaming and the movies are coming out, it is fairly ongoing. And I think that as long as the psychos continue to watch, that I think there will be some movies. I think there will be a 3rd movie at the very least. So
Yay.
So let's go ahead and talk about, before we get into their friendship, I think it's fun when we do episodes like this and did like Veronica Mars. It's kind of fun to talk about quotes, and we're doing this a little bit different because Veronica Mars had 3 seasons, a movie, and then it came out with a 4th season on Hulu. And so it was really easy just to do 4 episodes about it, right? But this has 8 seasons, and we're not going to do 8 episodes. So we're going to just generally talk about...
We could, but we're not going to.
Exactly. I don't want people to be like, did this become a Psych podcast? And be like, you know what, it did.
It sure did. Welcome to Best Forevers, a podcast about Psych.
I want to do a Psych podcast and call it, Come On, Son.
I will be on that podcast regularly. Like, I dragged my now roommate, I dragged her into Psych.
Yeah.
So if you listen to my podcast, this is Mysterious Third Roommate. Her name is Connie.
Yeah.
But I dragged her into Psych, and it was like, I would get the DVDs, and we'd like, over New Year's Eve, we'd like binge watch a season of Psych or like another TV show or something. But it was just, it was quality times. So I dragged people into my Psych orbit. It was a thing.
Anytime someone tells me they watch Psych, I get very excited. So, but one of the things that I enjoy is just sort of like, it's so quotable. It reminds me of the references they make on the show. They make references to quotes in the 80s, and there's so many actors and actresses that played these characters that we love from the 80s on the show. But just like the fun the show has, it seems like coming up with this stuff and doing it together, that they seem like they're friends in real life, and that the people who created the show, like that, everyone just has this like amazing chemistry. So let's start with, what is our favorite nickname that Shawn gives to Gus? So Courtney, what is yours?
So you warned me you were going to ask me this question, and immediately I said what my favorite nickname was, because I know exactly what it is, and it is Lavender Gooms, which is from the season 2 episode Lights, Camera, Homicidio, which is also my favorite episode of Psych. Yeah. But part of why I love Lavender Gooms is because if you watch the episode commentary or listen to the episode commentary, Lavender Gooms is Dule Hill's real life aunt, whom they call Aunt Tit. So I just love that James Roday Rodriguez and Dule Hill were close enough to, 1, know the name of each other's aunts, and 2, Rodriguez was then like, putting it in the show, # deal with it.
It makes you wonder, like, if it was in the script or if some of these are improv.
I'm sure a lot of them are improv, but like, I just loved that, like, because Lavender Gooms does kind of sound like a name you would make up if your friend's being, you know, this is my sidekick, Lavender Gooms. It's kind of a silly name, but
yeah, he's like, hi, I'm Shawn Spencer. This is my partner, Lavender Gooms.
Yeah, so, and that's his real life aunt though. So I'm like, oh, that's so sweet.
Mine is not as sweet as that. Mine always just makes me crack up.
Oh, I laugh at Lavender Gooms.
Yeah, I laugh at all of them, but my favorite is when he's like, hi, I'm Shawn Spencer. This is my partner, MC Clap Your Hands. And then Gus starts clapping his hands and says, with a Z.
That is a really good one.
Yeah, it reminds me of that song. Clap, clap, clap your hands. And like people are like clapping their hands, you know, that one cracks me up.
Became friends with someone who was also interested in Psych, not because of me. She liked it before I knew her.
Yeah.
But her favorite, I remember, was Dynasty, because it's SH, comma to the top, Dynasty, and that's God's comma. So when Gus goes along with it, it just adds a little something extra. So like with God's comma or with Clap Your Hands with a Z. Yeah.
Yeah, like, he doesn't necessarily like all the names, but he does play along with it. One of my favorites was an episode that I also just watched where he's like, hi, I'm Shawn Spencer. This is my partner, Burton Guster. And he's like, you're going to use my real name now? And it's because they're talking to like a criminal.
Because he over-enunciates it, too. This is my partner, Burton Guster.
The next thing that Shawn does is the Gus, don't be and it's usually this is his way of showing dissatisfaction with Gus. And so you can Google, and in the show notes is the Psych wiki for this, where you can see all of them and all the different ones from each season. And I just love, because there's like stuff on Etsy which will have like all of all of them for Gus. Like there's like you can get, I don't know if it was on Etsy, but I saw it in a Facebook group. You can get like a blanket for your bed that has all of the Gus don't be a.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yes, I want that.
That's so good.
What's your favorite Gus don't be?
My favorite is don't be a gooey chocolate chip cookie. Because I love to bake. But there are some good ones that are like runners up for me. Like gooey chocolate chip cookie is my knee-jerk reaction because it is my favorite.
Yeah.
But I also love don't be exactly half of an 11-pound ham. So specific.
I like when he says, Gus, don't be a gloomy you. Like a gloomy Gus. But my favorite is, Gus, don't be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Marzipan.
Shawn, it's Azkaban. And then you get another, I've heard it both ways.
Which is another frequent Shawnism.
So it's good for me that Psych wasn't that widely watched when it was on the air, because when I was on the speech team, which was an experience that I hated, I was receiving a coaching session. And at that point, God, I was young and naive then. I was in college, and McCain had just picked his running mate, and it was Sarah Palin.
Yep.
But I'm a college student. I'm not going to, I don't want to watch the news. I hate speech team. I'm not going to watch the news for speech team. And they gave me a speech to talk about Sarah Palin as a pick, but I had only ever read her name. So I guessed it was Palin. So I give this whole speech calling her Sarah Palin, Sarah Palin. At the end of the speech, my coach goes, "Is it Palin? I thought it was Palin." And I just very quickly go, "I've heard it both ways." And because he's not a Psych fan, he just was like, "Oh, okay, that's legit."
You're like, "Thanks, Shawn."
And I was like, phew.
I love that because I think that it speaks to Shawn's character, which we'll talk about in a minute here, about like being right and that sort of thing. So I've heard it both ways, which is a frequent quote. Yeah. My favorite frequent quotes come from Gus, and that's the "come on, son," or the agreement of "you know that's right," which I use all the time in GIF form on Facebook and in text message.
Are we skipping ahead to favorite quotes?
Yes, go ahead. I was just about to ask you that, yeah.
My favorite quote about their friendship is also one of my favorite recurring quotes. It's not my all-time favorite quote, which comes from like Lights, Camera, Homicidio, but it's after in season 1 they established that when Gus goes stealthy, he calls it, I'm gonna call me the jackal, like you're never gonna, and he does this thing where he like moves his head around, and so I really love that. But I think it's in season 2 they have to go like undercover and be like under the radar, and Gus goes, "Flip the jackal switch." And Shawn is so clearly like exasperated, like this is so stupid, but he still flips the imaginary switch, and Gus starts doing the little head thing. So it's my favorite quote about their friendship, because that just really encapsulates it. Is they get annoyed with each other, but they go along with it because of the love and trust at the core.
Yeah, it's like, but I'm not gonna leave Gus hanging, so I have to flip the imaginary switch.
You want me to flip the jackal switch? I'll flip it, even though I think it's stupid. And that's friendship, is sometimes you got to do stuff you think is dumb, but you do it because you care about the other person.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we'll see when we talk about their friendship is that Shawn isn't always open to expressing those sorts of things. And so he does it in ways that might not be as direct. Now, my favorite quote is also an exchange between Gus and Shawn, and it's from Bollywood Homicide, which is from season 4. So they're at this family's home, and they're eating spicy Indian food.
Oh.
And it gets, like, as they're talking to the family, it's just, like, they're getting sweatier, and it's bothering them, and you can see it on their faces. And then Shawn says to him, "I can't see out of my left eye." And Gus goes, "I see dead people." And then Shawn drinks the water. He goes, "My God, even the water is spicy." And Gus goes, "Who does that?"
And the best part is everybody else in the scene is just like calmly eating dinner.
Because like the rest of the people are used to Indian food, and Indian food is delicious. I wish it was more welcome and open and loved, because when I was in graduate school, I think we had 3 Indian restaurants in State College, Pennsylvania, and they were all delicious. I loved it. I haven't had Indian food in so long because we don't have it here in Mount Pleasant, and it's a real loss for us, honestly.
I had Indian food about an hour ago.
I know, and I was like,
honestly, I could eat it again tomorrow and I would be thrilled.
I could eat it every day, but that's what but I don't necessarily like really spicy food, but I also like this common experience between friends, and they're just kind of topping each other with, I can't see out of my left eye, I can see dead people. The water is spicy. Who does that?
They let each other know they care by constantly being ridiculous at each other.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how I feel when I'm with my friends. That's how I let them know I care. It's just relentless sass.
So I think that leads us into, now that we know more about the show and our involvement in some of our favorite things, which we'll also share some of our other favorite quotes in the second episode. But what we're going to do for the rest of the time today is to talk about Shawn and Gus as individuals, and then the top 5 reasons why their friendship works or is awesome, or whatever word you want to put in there for positive and best friendship ever. And then next week, we're going to talk about our top 5 reasons why their friendship is problematic, as well as end with an overall assessment for their friendship. So let's go ahead and start with Shawn as an individual. How would you describe Shawn to someone?
He's impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
He feels everything very strongly. Like, there's no in-betweens. He's either 100% in or he's 100% out. It's just, that's it. Like, he's like, this is the best thing I've ever done. And then when it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
So he's really good at what he does, but he kind of lucks into it because he can't take anything seriously. And part of that is how he is brought up, because he's forced to be very serious, very young. And so he never got it out of his system to be silly. And so now he's like, well, now I'll just take everything silly. Like, I'll take nothing seriously, and it's going to be fine. I'm going to solve all these crimes, and I'm great at it, and who cares?
Yeah. And I think you really nail it in the sense of, like, he either doesn't care or he cares 1,000%, right? And when he doesn't care, he's just, like, not going to do anything. He's just going to make jokes. He's going to make fun of it. And, of course, he's going to make fun of it even if he 1,000% cares, but it's a different sort of making fun of it then. But I also think it's important to note that, again, Shawn is not, in fact, a psychic. He is hyper observant, which comes from his dad. And then is it called eidetic?
It's an eidetic memory, and I know because I have one.
Okay. Oh, good for you.
It's not as fun as it sounds.
And he's supposed to get that from his mom, right? So that combination really allows him to be this person who picks up on information, whether nonverbal, verbal, written form, whatever the case is, to kind of come up with these clues before other people do, where he can then lift his fingers to his head and do his little psychic routine, and then they believe him. So in the end, it appears that part of who Shawn is being okay with manipulating and lying to others and letting them know that he's a psychic, because he would rather lie and manipulate than admit to his dad that he would be a good cop.
Yeah. And, like, I get it. Like, watching the series now when I'm watching it, I'm roughly the same age as them. Because obviously I started watching the show in high school, so they were, like, cool and older. But now I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, this isn't a good childhood. This is bad for him. No wonder he's the way he is. And, like, I think for him, it's easy for him to get close to people, but he's also scared internally of just getting hurt.
Yeah.
And putting himself out there too much. So all of these, with the exception of Gus, all of the people he's closest to over the course of the series, there is a foundational lie. But after that one lie, that's it. He's very open and honest.
Yeah.
It's just, it's all based on that one lie of, oh, and I'm a psychic, which is not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, they sort of make fun of that too. So they don't necessarily, like, they might even say, like, he's not a psychic, but the way they say it, people still believe that he's a psychic.
Yeah.
But I think, like, a lot of it we see is that, you know, his mom leaves, but he thinks that his dad has left his mother. So he's upset with his dad, and he lives with his dad, and his dad throws in like 100% into the parenting being about Shawn becoming a cop, essentially. And I think, like, when the mom leaves, and, you know, that creates sort of the conflict between them. And so I feel like his mom is gone. He doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. So he's, like, all in on his friendship, right? Which I think in some cases, like, it's pretty cool that he cares about friendship so much, but it might also be because he's lacking in these other relationships. But you mentioned he's, like, impulsive, and he doesn't, he's not actually fearful of the things he should be fearful of. Like, he's not scared to do some things, but then he has, like, out of control fear for other things that's almost, like, over the top ridiculous.
Yeah, there's, in the episode commentary for the dinosaur episode, where Shawn says, you know, this man was killed by a dinosaur because of the bite marks, and everybody's like, you're nuts, it's not a dino, and then it turns out he's kind of right. But there's a moment in that episode where Chief Vic comes into Shawn's dad's house to be like, stop the intervention that we asked you to stage because we thought he was out of control. But we just found out that the name of the deceased is Christopher Franzen. He is a paleontologist. And Shawn kind of gives her a blank look, and then he looks at Gus, and Gus goes, a dinosaur hunter. And Shawn goes, as expected. And in the episode commentary, one of the writers goes, in so many ways, Shawn is the smartest person alive, but in so many other ways, he's so stupid. Because he doesn't apply himself. So he has all of this natural talent, and he's so observant, and because of the way his brain is wired, it all just sticks to him. But he doesn't know what a paleontologist is.
That's why he has Gus, which we'll talk about Gus in a moment. But I think it would be problematic to leave the conversation of Shawn without talking about the fact that he's attention-seeking and perhaps a tad bit, if not a lot bit, narcissistic. So in a lot of ways, it's all about him. In a lot of ways, it's about his rules, like, you know, that he might be wrong, but he's still right. You know, there's like just a lot of ways in which the attention has to be on him and thus is taken away from other people like Gus and the other detectives that he works with, which I don't think Gus entirely minds all the time, but there are some days where you're like, the sun should shine on me, and Shawn doesn't exactly let that happen. So my question to you is, would you want to be friends with Shawn?
On his own?
Yes.
In small doses, probably. Because, like, we could bond over our shared weirdly good memories. I used to do a bit with my family because I dragged my mom and my brother into Psych as well.
Yeah.
And we used to do a thing where I would just, like, be hyper observant or remember something random that happened years ago. And my brother would jokingly go, how would you know that? And I'd just, like, do the Psych pose. Because, like, they know it's just
fingers.
That's just how my memory works. But, you know, it's fun to, if I had to, I could probably pretend to be psychic. But I could probably put up with him in small doses. I think he's the kind of person that it would be exhausting to be around him constantly. I don't have the personality. I'm not Gus fully. I'm kind of like, I have some of Gus, I have some of Shawn, which is why I would want to be both of their friends, but I would need to be small doses with Shawn by himself because it would get on my nerves.
So if Shawn asks you to do something, you might be like, hey, is Gus going to be there?
Yeah, or like, it depends on the something we're going to do. Because like, if we're going to go to the roller rink, absolutely not. Because I know the entire time we're there, Shawn's going to make it about him and trying to get as much attention as possible. And that's going to annoy me. But if it's like, we're going to go see a movie and then get dinner after, totally, let's go do that. Because I would love to talk about movies with you and be funny during a movie with you, fine. Yeah. But anything where there's any kind of like, attention seeking could be had, it would annoy me way too much. How about you?
I think that being friends with Shawn would be a lot of fun at the beginning, but over time would be more difficult. So in a short-term aspect, I think he would be really great. And I think that at a certain point, though, again, it's like, can it be about me for a little bit? Can we focus on this thing? But at the same time, he does these little small things for Gus that I think are really special. But, and I just wonder if Shawn can make a lot of friends, but I think he might be better off having that one sort of supporting guy, and that's Gus. And so, how would you describe Gus?
I love Gus. He's a perfect human specimen. So
are you talking about Dule Hill, or are we talking about Gus, or both?
Yes, both. They're amazing.
Same.
So, you're welcome, world. God, put Dule Hill in more things, please and thank you. So
Yes.
Gus, in a lot of ways, is the opposite of Shawn. Mm-hmm. And where he can get over that initial hump, like, I think if you're going to be Shawn's friend, it's going to be super fun at the beginning, and then you're going to hit that middle point where you're like, for the love of God, can we please just talk about anything other than you?
Yeah.
I think Gus is the only person to make it over that hump where it's like, oh, this person is actually a diligent and valuable best friend. And I think the reason why Gus makes it over that hump is because he is steadfast where Shawn is impulsive. And he has a stable 9 to 5. He's very book smart. He's very dedicated. Like, if he commits to something, he sticks it out, even if it's not fun or glamorous. Like, he's a pharmaceutical rep, and he's gonna keep doing it. And he's gonna do his fun side business with his buddy, but he made a commitment, he's gonna honor it. And like, he has, you know, a Roth IRA and a 401k, and he's so responsible and just, but at the same time, once you get past all of his like buttoned up, like very particularness, he's such a goofball.
He's a nerd, a total dork.
He's a sweet little nerd. He tap dances. It's precious.
He loves Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm. He's just a dork. He drove out to see one of the Pips, and everybody was like, "Oh, you met Gladys Knight," and he goes, "No, I met one Pip. The other one got stuck in traffic." But he drove out to see them when they go to Comic-Con. He knows everybody there, and he's like, "You know what? These people are cool." And he has first edition comic books, and he like does all of this nerdy stuff, and he is just unashamed about loving it.
Yeah, and he has the deepest knowledge about things that you would never even imagine, like the spelling bee. Just like,
he's a ferroequinologist because he loves trains, and like that's the other thing where Shawn is very impulsive and flighty and like flits from subject to subject. Gus is such a nerd in his soul that I think he just likes learning stuff. And so he'll just, you know, read about, you know, marine biology one weekend, and then he just knows a lot about marine biology now, or be like, trains are pretty cool. What's going on there? And now he's a ferroequinologist.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that on the surface, Gus is together, and he's very knowledgeable. He's a nerd. He's a know-it-all. He has to explain so many things to Shawn, as you noted, the dinosaur hunter. But he has to explain so much, but then when you get past that, he is fearful, and he's uptight, and he's a complainer, and he will not forget that you did these things to him, Shawn, even when he was 8 or 9 or 10 or in college. He's going to remember everything that you've done.
I learned that at the Mexican border twice.
He's sympathetic. He's a sympathetic crier. One of maybe the more important qualities of friendship is loyalty. And he brings tangible things to this whole psych business, which would be the obvious is money.
Yep. The business is in his name.
What money does Shawn have? So Shawn's like, let me buy you all waffles. And then Gus is like, so I'm buying waffles. He's like, yes, you are. But he has the Blueberry, which is the car.
So cute.
And he has a super sniffer. He can sniff out anything. And he's also a rookie, but still good at, like, figuring out locks and what do you call that? What do you call that? It's like the Italian job, Charlize Theron.
Yeah. Oh, what did he call it?
I don't know.
I can't remember. It's like an amateur cryptologist or something like that.
Yes, yeah. He has a magazine that he's been getting for a few months. But that goes to the point that he loves to learn. So then I guess it makes it an easier question this time. I imagine that you would want to be friends with Gus. I would want to be friends with Gus, but at a certain point, his complaining, I think, or the know-it-all thing could become annoying. But here's the thing. We're all annoying in some way. But I think there's enough to discuss and to bond over and to talk about to be great friends with Gus.
I would absolutely be friends one-on-one with Gus. I would nerd out with him. I am also an annoying know-it-all who's very uptight. Like, we'd probably get on each other's nerves because we both have to, like, we're both fussy in particular. But I would love that he gets it. Like, when I'm like, I can't, I gotta do this first, he would get it. When I'm like, it was really bothering me that I hadn't vacuumed my floor in, like, a month. So then I vacuumed. Like, he would get it. He would understand what I meant by it was just bothering me that I had to reorganize my closet because I just couldn't have it be the way it was anymore. And I would love to be his friend. I would be better friends with Shawn if Gus were around because I think I have more of Gus in me.
Yeah.
But...
And here's the thing. I think if you were to come into this friendship group, that Shawn might be more jealous about it than Gus would be.
Absolutely.
Because I think this is his person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is his, in terms of friendship, this is his soulmate.
And, like, deep down, I think Shawn knows that, like, he doesn't really have other friends. He has Gus. And so every time he finds out Gus has a work friend or Gus has friends from college that, you know, Shawn didn't go to, so he doesn't know them. So he finds out these things about his best friend, who is his one friend.
Yeah.
And he absolutely gets jealous, whereas I think Gus is less likely to feel that way.
Yeah, because he's had other friends. Like, we see it, like, every episode is a flashback to basically them as kids, right? And so that is something that I think indicates to us that we learn a little bit more about them each. And so you can see the ways in which Gus has had friends, and Shawn gets upset when they come back from camp and they did, like, this camp activity with, oh gosh, why do I always blank out on my words?
The piñatas?
Yes, the piñata, thank you. And so he's upset because Gus picked the guy who always wins the piñata contest, and he ends up with the kid who wears a winter jacket. He's like, what is happening? It's so hot out here.
It's so hot out. Take your coat off. Yeah, and so it's stuff like that where it's like Gus has this rich social life, but because Shawn has to be the center of attention, and part of that is being a little narcissistic or a lot narcissistic, and part of it is possibly he's just really insecure because, you know, growing up, his dad was like, your only value is your observational skills and your mind.
Yeah.
That's it. You're a child, but that's all we value you for. So he never learned, like, I have other things to bring to the table. So he has to get that attention to feel better about himself. He has to be the center of things. He has to be the smartest kid in the room and the best at everything. And Gus doesn't have that in him, so it's easier to be his friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you mentioned it before that they somehow work together. So let's talk about the 5 reasons why their friendship works. Maybe from the 5th to the 1st, maybe. So
sure.
I don't know if you've ordered your reasons like I have. I'm very Gus in my ordering of my reasons.
See, and this is where my Shawn-ness comes into play. I didn't order mine, but I know the order I intended them to be read in.
Yes.
So I'm good.
So how about this? I'll start with mine, and then we'll see if we have similar ones and we can share them. So my 5th one is that they've been friends for a really long time, which means they know each other just so well that it brings this, their friendship works because they understand each other.
That's my 2nd reason.
See? Woo woo.
Yeah, I wrote down there's something to be said for long-term friends, like someone who has known you for decades.
Yeah, and one of the things you said is that Gus was able to get over sort of that hump with Shawn, and it's because they, you know, in some episodes they say they've been friends for life, another one says you've been my best friend since the 5th grade, so there isn't necessarily a start point. We just know that they've been friends for a very long time, and so there's something to be said that despite whatever might happen, you just still keep being friends with some of your first friends no matter what. And maybe some of them need to be cut out of your life. But in this case, I think definitely say for Shawn that having Gus is good. Having Gus as a friend is good for him.
Yeah. It's his chosen family.
Yes.
And you were talking about how, you know, there's all this history and like through everything, you know, you're going to have this friend. Keep in mind that Shawn is the person who's had like 47 jobs. He drove the Wienermobile. He moves around constantly. He changes jobs every 2 seconds, but he's always friends with Gus.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's the constant.
And this is in a time before cell phones and like commonplace internet. So it wasn't like you just pop on Facebook and send Gus a Facebook message being like, hey, Gus, what's up? He had to make an effort to stay connected with Gus. And he made that effort.
Absolutely. And I think there's like lots of signs of this throughout the show, and I'll just give a couple examples of this. Like in one episode, even though this comes across as negative because I think he's complaining about Gus, there's probably 50 other examples of this being like a positive thing. But he goes, "Don't do the thing you did when we were kids." So it's like he remembers like, okay, Gus, don't do that. Like, you did that as kids. Like, don't do that.
And Gus does the same thing right back to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Gus often says, "Shawn, you know I'm a sympathetic crier," right?
Yes.
But it'll insert whatever thing, right? So it's like...
That's a Gus thing I also share. If someone's crying, I am crying.
Yeah. But the one instance that I was watching recently was an episode about Juliet, and she wasn't crying, but he was
crying. Yeah.
Crying. So maybe he's a preemptive crier too. I'm not really sure.
He's just very empathetic. He feels other people's feelings.
A sensitive man.
I love him so much.
Love it. So that's the first reason, right? So they're long-term friends.
So that was my reason number 2.
So what did you have next on your list, or the first thing you had on your list?
The first thing, so going from least priority to top priority, yeah?
Yes.
That's what we're doing. Okay, so for me, it's that they call each other on their issues. And it's played for laughs because it's a comedy. But they call each other out. So Gus is always being like, "Shawn, stop making this about you. Shawn, like, don't go off Shawn, don't do this reckless thing because you're going to get us both killed.
Shawn!"
And then when inevitably Shawn does it and they get in trouble, Gus is like, "Who told you?" Yeah, like... And Shawn does the same thing right back at Gus, where it's like, "Oh, don't do the thing where you flick your nose and you lose yourself in a girl." Like, because that's a thing that Gus does. And that's a really important thing in friendships. Like, not a lot of friendships have that level of comfort where even if you're criticizing the other person, you're like, "This is a flaw that you have." That they're going to hear that and understand it's coming from you. So it's coming from a place of caring.
And my next one, I think, fits well with this. This is great. It says they're able to continue their friendship despite conflict. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's the thing. In some cases, I think they just might ignore things that aren't that big of a deal. But then they do work through things and they do call each other out. I don't think you see a lot of times where Shawn apologizes to Gus. Maybe he should do that a little bit more. Right.
They very rarely will outright apologize to each other. But they'll kind of do the thing... It's emblematic in the episode where they're trying to figure out if the old man was murdered over Christmas, and they're in the attic and they're both doing the thing that scares the other one. So Shawn starts doing a telltale heart bit, and Gus starts like rocking the rocking chair back and forth and saying, "Norman, Norman." And so they both are freaking out, and then they agree, "Truce," and then they go. But then a second later, at the same time, they both reach for the other thing. And then they're like, "Okay, we're good."
Yeah. Well, I think similarly, like when Shawn will do something and he knows that Gus isn't happy, he'll be like, "But what if on the way we get food?" And I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's an example because I think Shawn knows, because of the previous reason, that Gus, he knows him over the years. He knows that Gus is a glutton for food.
That's actually my next reason.
Yeah, tell us.
It's their shared interests and hobbies, because in a lot of ways they're polar opposites, but they have so many things in common. They have snacks and their mutual love of food, and it sounds like that's such a basic thing, but having a friend who's like, "Yes, let's go get noodles and company." This is an example that I know I've talked about on this podcast before about my very real friendship with Sasha, but... It's great to have a friend and be like, "I want mac and cheese. Do you want mac and cheese?"
"You know I want mac and cheese.
Let's go get mac and cheese." Yeah, and this is another food reason, but like things like the cinnamon festival, where they find out there's such a thing as a cinnamon festival, and they're both like, "Well, yeah, we're going to that." And like they watch a lot of like pro wrestling together, and they do shared crafts for it, even though they're like, "Oh, this is kind of creepy," but they still do it because it's an important part of their friendship because of their shared interests and hobbies.
Yeah. I love that. I think that is similar to one I have on here, but I like to keep that one as completely separate because I think that is exactly right. And for those of you who are Twin Peaks fans, the Cinnamon Festival one is the Twin Peaks episode. So you probably, if anything, want to see that because that is frighteningly. I mean, it is so Twin Peaks.
It's very Twin Peaks. I watched Twin Peaks for that episode. That's how into Psych I was in college. I had never watched Twin Peaks, and I watched the first season and part of the second season. And then I was like, I think I've watched enough of this to understand the episode.
Yeah, and like I watched Twin Peaks when it was originally on, and I can't say I remember a whole lot except where is Laura Palmer?
Yeah.
You know, like
who killed Laura Palmer?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, it was who killed. Sorry.
No, it's good.
Can't even get it right. Apparently,
God,
I don't
Alysa.
remember that. What? God, get it together. But like, so 3A was like shared interests. So I'm gonna add in 3B. So they do things because they share interests, but then they also do things for each other that they don't want to do. So, for example, Gus loses one of his college friends. That's part of Blackapella.
Blackapella, yes.
Yes, which I just love that name. It cracks me up. And that's my favorite opening song is the Boys to Men a cappella.
It's so good.
So I really love that episode. But Shawn doesn't like funerals, and he goes to the funeral for Gus, right? Mm-hmm. They will do these things for each other. So they do things with each other because they like it, but they do things for each other because they respect and trust and believe in the other person. And I think that is really important to friendship, that there are people who are terrified of funerals, and to show up at one because it's important to your friend, I think is a really important sign of friendship, right? Mm-hmm. That is not a red flag. That's like a yellow friendship flag. Like, yes, yes, friendship. Yellow is the color of friendship.
Stand up for your friend.
Yes, exactly. So I would say that, like, for our reason 3, your 3A and mine was 3B. So I think that is an awesome reason. Okay, I'm going to do number 2, though. Their friendship is awesome because they spend a lot of time bonding with each other over the nicknames and the jokes and the teasing and their traditions. One of my favorite traditions is when they feel like they're on top, they're winning, and they're about to solve a case, they start dancing.
They dance, yeah.
They dance a lot, and I think that's one of my favorite things that they do. But the Gus don't be or this is my partner, the jokes, and something we know that friends do is we razz each other. So a lot of the things of calling each other out, you see them in a lot of like razzing each other and, oh, but didn't you wet the bed and didn't you do this?
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think that is something that helps us continuously.
Shawn, that was you a lot.
I think that is something that continuously helps people bond, and it can help you get out of conflict, right? Mm-hmm. Remembering these jokes, remembering these things, doing a tradition, like, I know you want to dance right now, you know, things like that, I think really are a signal of friendship affection, which is especially difficult in male friendships to communicate because they're not supposed to express affection, right? And so I think this is the way that they do it, which also includes the fist bump, which they do a lot.
I love a fist bump. And I do love every time, like, the few times Gus doesn't fist bump back, it's always like the look on Shawn's face where he's just like, you're going to leave me hanging? And he just gets so sad in that moment because he knows he can rely on his buddy, which kind of ties into what you were just saying and into what my number 2 reason is, which is the absolute trust at the core of their relationship. Mm-hmm. All the friendships I value most, and I think most good friendships have this, like, such trust at the core of them because you trust your friend to act in your best interest. You trust your friend to handle your thoughts and feelings and your emotions and validate you. Mm-hmm. And so even though they spar and they snipe at each other and they like pick at each other, it's because they have this fundamental trust in each other that you are truly not going to do anything that's going to be that serious to hurt me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same for you.
Yeah, I just watched the episode. It's the season 4 finale. Mr. Yin Presents.
That's the next one I'm watching. We're on like the same Psych schedule.
Yeah. Well, this is my 3rd time watching it.
That's true.
Just a matter of months. Yeah. But in this particular episode, so there is essentially like a serial killer kind of criminal that they're chasing in season 3, and that, spoiler alert, ... is Ellie Sheedy.
What? Yeah.
What? and she's in prison, but then she's yang, and so we have yin and yang. And so in this one, it's an entire Hitchcock theme, and it's flippin' amazing. But in it, the girl that Shawn is seeing, Abby, or has been seeing, and then Jules, the detective who he's had a crush on since like the first time he met her, are both being held by Yin, and he doesn't know where they are. And so he goes after Abby, and he says to Gus, you need to go after Jules. If I can't go, I trust that you can go and that you can save Jules. And so I think that's the only way that they would have been able to find both women, is if Shawn and his dad went this way and Lassiter and Gus went this way. Yeah. And I think that has a fundamental impact on the relationship with Juliet in some aspects. But I think in terms of the friendship, I think Gus goes because he's saying, I trust you. And so he has to be that person for Shawn in this very stressful moment. So
I think he says something to the effect of, the only way I cannot be there for Juliet is because I know you are.
You will. Exactly. That was like verbatim. Jesus. You do have
I told you. I have an eidetic memory.
I don't even know how to say it. I'm like, you have one of those E-minds. I don't even know.
I describe it because like I don't have a perfectly photographic memory because I do forget stuff. So I don't know if that means I have a truly eidetic memory. I have a weirdly good memory is how I usually describe it.
No, that was great because anyone who listens to any of my podcasts knows that I lose my words sometimes and I can't pronounce things. So what are you going to do?
People who listen to my podcast know that Sasha and I once forgot the word hypnotist for an entire hour. So there are flaws in the eidetic memory. Shawn doesn't know what a paleontologist is. I forgot what a hypnotist was one time. It's fine.
Here's the thing. Do you even have a podcast if you don't forget something for an entire episode?
That's true.
I mean, honestly.
Those of you who just listen to podcasts and are like, I can't believe they forget stuff.
That's us.
The second you start your podcast, you will realize, oh, that's why.
It's harder than you might think. Yep. So what was your number one reason why their friendship is amazing?
Amazing.
Really
so
awesome?
First, I want to Chekhov's gun. The other favorite quote I pulled about their friendship we'll talk about on the next episode because it'll dovetail nicely with the conclusion to the Yin Yang saga because it's from that episode. But so we're Chekhov's gunning that. We'll get to it next episode. But the number one thing for me, and this is something we talked about a little bit off air, is both Shawn and Gus have what the other one needs, but they have it to such an extreme that it is bound to cause conflict. So Gus, growing up, his parents babied him. They always, to this day, they're still looking out for him. They give him $100 in his Christmas stocking every year.
Where's my Christmas money?
I was looking forward to that. And like when his parents go to jail, they're saying, we're going to get our mother out of a nursing home to look after you, Gus, a 30-year-old man. So his parents overly coddled him and they overly babied him and they never gave him the sense of like personal autonomy and responsibility. Yeah. So Gus, in reaction to that, became this very buttoned up, very staid, like, I'm going to succeed because I'm driven and I'm powerful in my own right and I can do what I want. And then you have you have Shawn, whose dad turned him into a cop, like, even playing hide and seek had to be practice for when he was a cop one day. He was going to be a detective, and that was how it was going to go. So nothing is just a simple game. It's not just a book report.
It can't just be fun.
No, God forbid you have fun for no reason. You have to be learning something. So Shawn, in rebellion, then becomes Mr. Fun. That's all he wants to do all the time is he just wants that instant gratification to just flit from thing to thing to thing to thing and just do whatever he wants all the time. So Gus needs that little bit of free spirit, I'm going to do what I want and just have a fun time with it and we'll be silly about it and it'll be fine. Shawn needs that structure and that feeling of consistency and by the book and just like step by step. Yes. He needs that. But because they're both such extremes, it causes that kind of central conflict where they're constantly sniping at each other and they're constantly getting on each other's cases. But it's because they complete each other, truly. They're just two extremes of the same scale. Like,
Yeah. Courtney, can I tell you that my number one reason why their friendship works and is awesome is, quote, they complete each other, end quote. And listeners, I just said, Courtney, come up with your 5, and I came up with my 5. And 2 of ours overlap, but generally they've been the same and generally in the same order. And I say,
pew, pew, pew.
Wait, woo! I don't even know. I'm making just noises now.
I'm doing a little
we'll
dance
like them.
Yeah.
Come on, son.
Come on, son. Jerk chicken, you know that's right.
That's the thing is like they're even though there's that criminal in the games and the killer yin and yang, that's essentially what Shawn and Gus are, and they need a little bit of each other to be a better version of themselves. And I think there's something about friendship that when your friends can empower you and pull out the best in you, that makes them really awesome friends. And so you need to have those good people on your side. You need to have the people that are going to be your cheerleader, your supporter, and just like going to bring the best out of you. And I think that is definitely the case for Gus to Shawn. And there's probably less times from Shawn to Gus, but like Gus might not need it as much, but I think that he would say that his life is a lot more fun because of Shawn, and that there's something to be said about that. Like, we just need sometimes to stop worrying and stressing out and just have some fun, and that's what Shawn can bring to the friendship. So what other do you have any other thoughts about the awesomeness of their friendship?
I'm having to restrain myself from saying what my favorite quote for the next episode is going to be, because the things you were just saying, I'm like, oh, it applies to that, but I can't say it. Next time.
Because if you say it, I'll just cut it out.
It's true.
You have to say it next
It's true, but it's so relevant. Anyway, so I love their friendship so much. It is very rare that you see as close of a friendship for men where it's not played off as a joke. Because like, as much as I love the friendship at the core of Scrubs, it's played as a joke. Everybody else is like, haha, you guys are such close friends. Haha.
Yeah, like a bromance.
It's like, oh, you're secretly in love with each other. Ugh. Yeah. But everybody just is like, this is your best friend. We get it. Like, you're very close. Cool beans. Yeah. It's treated seriously, and it's treated as a truly caring relationship. And I love it.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, I just think that I just get overwhelmed in some ways about their friendship, because we just don't see that sort of vulnerability with friendship, and that you're right, like, taken seriously. But even there's a point where Shawn's dad wants to talk to him, and he's like, Gus, I need to talk to my son alone. And Shawn will be like, it's Gus. You can say anything in front of Gus. And it's just like, at a certain point, their friendship is like a brotherhood, which I think, you mentioned earlier, like that chosen family. And I think like they just are each other's person in terms of friendship, and you can't beat that. And some people will never find that person, or they'll have multiple people. And so like to be able to see it and to enjoy both the good moments and the bad moments, I think is important. And it is exactly why this is broken up into 2 episodes, because you can't have light without the dark. You can't have dark without the light. And it wouldn't be a realistic friendship if it was always just good. And so in the next episode, Courtney and I are going to talk about the problems with their friendship and why their friendship is perhaps not good for either one of them. And we'll kind of talk through that to understand friendship in a different way, and just to sort of geek out on Psych for another episode. But this has been super fun, talking about quotes, remembering different parts of the TV show, to be able to talk about these 2 guys that I've loved since 2006. It's just amazing. And so if you're a Psych fan, please tell Courtney and I, what is your favorite quote? What's your favorite Gus don't be? What is your favorite Gus nickname? What's your favorite episode? And what do you think about their friendship? And you can email me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com, or you can tag me at bestforeverspod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So Courtney, tell them where they can find you and Spoop Hour.
Well, my address is, I'm just kidding. So
let's not go that far.
Just one quick last Psych thought. There's a throwaway joke where they're talking, like, where they're both like getting involved with women and they're in more serious relationships, and they like re-up their commitment to each other, where they're like, we're still gonna have the back-to-back houses, right? And it's with the adjoining pool, and Shawn says dibs on the diving board. And that's their friendship, and it's so sweet. But anyway, I'm Courtney. I'm one half of the podcast Spoop Hour, which is a It's a paranormal comedy podcast. Those are words I can say. Each week, my friend Sasha and I, who are two certified Halloweenies, we are scared of everything, but we tackle something spooky. So ghosts, cryptids, anything that goes bump in the night, you name it, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to make a lot of jokes about it. So come check us out. We're on all the podcatchers, we think. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Spoop Hour. You can also contact us at spoophour@gmail.com, and that's spoop with a P in the middle and a P at the end, as in penguin. Spooky poop.
Yeah, and I've been on a number of their episodes, and they've been on a number of mine. The last one, I think, was the Slumber Party one from last year, and you were in the Veronica Mars episode. And then the most recent Spoop Hour episode I was on, we were talking about the
basements
crazy
and attics.
Crap that's in attics and basements, which let's just never go in those places.
Sticky man is coming.
And Courtney, I'm glad you brought up the back-to-back houses because we're going to have to talk about that more next week.
Oh, absolutely.
But a great sign of friendship, but maybe also problematic sign. Who knows? Well, you'll have to come back to find out. So until next time, friends, see what you can do to binge all 8 seasons and join me and Courtney in talking about the best friendship ever, because without our friends, who would we be? For listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Hey, Sasha.
Hey, Courtney.
Where can you get hot takes about ghosts, cryptids, farts, and cats?
I don't know, where?
On our podcast, Spoop Hour.
Oh, that's right.
Each week, we talk about the things that spook us out and we laugh through our fear.
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Spoop Hour, and you can listen to our podcast on iTunes, Podbean, or really anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Feel free to also drop us a line at spoophour@gmail.com.
We want to hear about your ghosts.
Thanks.